Let me even
All right, we're about to go live.
Okay, give me a second.
So you'll let me know?
Yeah. Hey, what's up? Welcome to Abroad While Black. Excited to be with you guys this Saturday morning and share an experience of Nzali, who moved from North Carolina to Ghana and works as an education consultant here. So she has a very interesting background. She was actually a secondary principal. She's been an education consultant. She is the founder of the H.E.R Collective here in Ghana, and she works to support people to connect members of the African diaspora to Ghana. So we're very excited once again to have you guys here on Abroad While Black. Just a little recap. We meet here every Saturday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, to really share stories of Black people that lived abroad. The purpose of this is really just to be able to let people know that there are opportunities outside of the United States. I mean, there's a big world out there, and you don't necessarily have to be restricted. So I'm Courtney Aziz, one of the hosts of this particular show. I've lived in Ghana for 10 years. I am the founder and executive director of Environment 360, an NGO slash social enterprise that basically uses the informal sector to leverage the recycling of plastics and paper here in Ghana. So very excited to be here with you guys this Saturday and learn more.
Awesome. My name is Sean Burrows, also one of the hosts of Abroad While Black. I'm really excited about today to tap into education and really dive deep into what are the impacts of being educated through a Eurocentric view when you are disconnected from your history, you're disconnected from different parts of your diaspora. Again, a major element of what we are doing here is to kind of combine these narratives, to combine these stories. I feel like any successful way forward will not be one that's just based in one place. It will take all of us from all over the world to support each other and create not only this conversation, but also create different types of revenue streams, different type of business opportunities, different types, again, of just ways of interacting with other people who share your skin color, knowing that that skin color has different implications in different places. So we're going to dive deep into those things and more. I'm really happy with the guests that we have today, because again, education is something I'm really passionate about. Just to very, very quickly touch on my background, I'm currently the co-founder of Ingressive for Good. We basically support the youth here. When I say youth, we're talking about high school graduates and up, and we basically put them on a path that leads them from technical talent training all the way to attracting investment funding for the startups that we influence them to start. I'm also the CEO of my own private operations firm, Burrows Enterprises. Just like on this group that we're in, my business is focused on building an economic bridge between Africa and its diaspora. Again, we're not focused just on Africa. We're a global organization, but if you're abroad and you're Black, we know where your roots are. And I think it's very important that we touch on that. So Cordy, back to you. I'm really excited about today. I think we can touch on, like, let's just look at some of the current things that are going on. I believe Johnetta is on the way, and we can't wait for her to get here. But we've had some really, really interesting things that have been happening globally. If we're looking at the movement, the protests, the different things like that. So we are seeing some pushes in the right direction. But let's just start with that conversation there. What have you been seeing around the world?
So, I mean, like you said, it's really interesting times in the US right now. There's a lot going on. One of the things I think that I found very interesting is the police issue. So in Atlanta, you actually had police not showing up. And then Minneapolis, their city council voted to abolish the police and replace it with more of a community based organization that focuses, I guess, on communication and keeping people safe. So for me, this is like a really interesting thing, because I think one of the major focuses of these protests has been really actually removing the police or getting the police to sort of be defunded and then move that money into other things that address some of the systemic issues that make Black people more prone to be arrested. But I'm not so sure really how I feel about this. My
Hmm.
real major concern is that I think people fail to realize that when you don't have a local law enforcement, you're actually probably subject to national law enforcement if something goes wrong. So really, is this sort of the start of martial law? I think people really have to think this through. I don't know where this whole chant of defund the police came from. But this is very interesting to me. So this could either be really positive for Black people, or it can go wayward for every American in the States right now.
Yes, very much so. So I'll add in my 2 cents. I'd like to just point out I've defunded the police maybe in 2014 when I moved away from there and stopped in many ways, at least through sales tax and different things. I've reconcentrated my money in a completely different place. But the thing that bothers me the most is that I'm all about the positive intentions. I understand that the source of the issue with defunding the police is to kind of limit the resources they have to oppress us. And yes, it makes sense. But again, we have to approach this with a plan, because you have to understand that what we are doing now, we're looking at this in many ways like we're pushing forward, when we really need to look at this thing like a rubber band, and understand that when you pull a rubber band, that rubber band is eventually going to snap back somewhere. Our friend is here. She's just joined us, but we'll keep continuing with the conversation just to finish this final thought, and maybe we'll reintroduce it and get our feedback as well. But again, what you have to realize is people who are on the other side of the argument that we are having, they want what we are trying to do to fail. And when we are acting in ways where we're having knee-jerk reactions and saying, forget them all, we still do have to protect ourselves. And I did not see a part of that plan that really spoke about how are we going to protect ourselves? Where are these community leaders coming from? How are we selecting them? How are we vetting them? If we don't have a plan in place, we're just simply transferring the power from one person who already has the power to another person who already has the power, if we are not involved in that selection process. So again, we have to step away from some of these knee-jerk reactions and really sit back and start having a plan. Now I'll get into my,
Yes.
she looks like we have anyway, I'll just continue. We have to look at it from an internal versus external. And when I say internal versus external, we are very much so fighting to push an external agenda. We are trying to change policies. We are trying to change systems. We are trying to change a lot of those things. But what we really also cannot forget, and remember that the external things will not be successful without working on the internal mechanisms. We need to have a value system transition. Again, if we are changing these policies that work on our behalf, but we are not changing the way we spend our money and creating leverage to basically support politicians and put people in place who share our views, different things like that. If we are not looking for Black businesses to support, if we are not looking for just different avenues where we are working internally, then a lot of these external things will either A, be short-lived, or B, not have impact. So with that one being said, what do you think, Courtney?
So I think that's really good. Once again, this is Abroad While Black. Thanks for joining us. We're about to let in Nzali, who will be speaking more about her initiatives here in Ghana. So she's going to be able to join the conversation. Right now, we're really discussing this whole thing of defunding the police, and if this is actually something that's really good for Black people. Once again, on the surface, it sounds good, but in real life, and I think you brought up a good point that there are a variety of things that we need to look at. And one of the things I find that sometimes the Black movement, we feel like we can be very focused on one point, like it excludes other things. So it's like, I hate seeing this meme on Facebook where it's like, don't try to, use Black on Black crime to take away from this directive. But in real life, there is a lot of Black on Black crime. And because we're addressing issues with the police, doesn't mean that we can't talk about Black on Black crime. And I see sometimes that we're enabling bad behavior in our Black society. So I know one thing I've learned from living here from Ghana is that people don't want to disgrace their names because it's linked back to a family, it's linked back to someone who mentored them, it's linked back to something else. And I find like we don't have this in the US in particular. And it's really interesting because when I look at the Rashad Brooks thing. So yes, I think that the police used excessive force. And yes, I don't think that they needed to kill this man because he had a taser. But I'm also wondering in my mind, like, dude, you knew you were in the wrong. Where do you get off trying to be like superhero, particularly in this climate where basically the officer has you in cuffs, you then start to struggle, you overpower them, you grab the taser. I mean, you might have been on that liquor, but it's still, we have to take some level of personal accountability for bad behavior. And I think that this is what you're talking about. You have things in terms of externally as well. We're not always the victims. And I think that one thing I've learned from living abroad is that Black people, we often see ourselves as passive standbys, like, oh, this happened to me because I'm Black, or, you know, I can't do this because I'm Black. And I think one thing I've realized being Black abroad is that there's a greater sense of responsibility. And that doesn't take away from systemic racism, but it also, I mean, shows that maybe if we policed our own neighborhoods like the Black Panthers did, maybe if we created our own community coalitions, instead of putting money into other things, we invest in our own communities and build community centers and parks and other things, maybe we would be better off.
Internal work is what is needed. I'm really glad you touched on that. Now, you brought up a very interesting point with the taser issue. So what I took from that is that they took that this man using the taser was that their life was threatened. But in other court cases and different things like that, where people have died from tasers, they say that the taser is not a lethal weapon. So how do you use lethal force when in a case where you consistently said this is not a lethal weapon? So that one is kind of sketchy to me. I want to give a shout out. We have some new people joining. We have Aaron and Janelle, Jackson State alumni in the building. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And also we have Adana Sims. She brought up an excellent point that I want to mention very quickly. She said that people need to think about systems. The issue is economics and healthcare. The US tries to solve all problems through the legal system and education. It's not possible. I will take a little bit of, I'll take issue with that. What I say is that no matter what laws we pass, or no matter what laws that the judicial branch interprets, it is the police and the executive branch that are the ones who execute the laws. So the laws technically do not have power without the support of the executive branch and or the police. But as far as the healthcare part, I definitely agree. It's not just healthcare, it's energy, it's communication. We don't create, we don't own anything.
Are you able to hear me?
Uh-oh. Hey, how are you? Johnetta, welcome. We can hear you. We prepped everybody up.
Hello.
Adana
Hi,
is
great.
live in this comment section. Also, Arinze, welcome. Jacqueline, welcome to the conversation.
And something else I think that you bring up is you were talking about what we actually bring to the table in the system.
It is a little unstable.
Okay, no problem, Johnetta. We'll get with you. We're currently doing current events right now. So just bringing on board, but thanks, Johnetta, so much for joining us. We're really just talking about the whole initiative to defund the police. Are you able to do video or no?
Yes.
If not, let's see what we can sort of work out in the meanwhile.
Video.
Okay, great.
Hi,
so good to see you.
Hey.
Good, so welcome to Abroad While Black this morning.
Thank
As you know, this is a weekly show that we do that really profiles Black people that live all over the world. Today, our guest is Nzali, who has founded the H.E.R Collective here in Ghana. She's an education consultant as well. She works at connecting people in the Africa diaspora into Ghana. And what we are just doing right now, Nzali, is we're really just sort of talking about what's happening in the US to sort of set the tone for today's conversation. And we've been talking about this whole defunding the police issue. And one of the things that we were mentioning is that one of the things Adana Sims, who's actually a Larry as well, brought up the fact that it's all about systems. And I think that one important thing we have to realize about systems, and this is what I found living abroad, is that you can't change a system, particularly when you didn't create the system. So I'm the founder of a company. If I choose, I don't care what employees per se think.
Yeah.
If me as the founder, if I don't choose to change that particular system, it's not being changed. And I have my own ulterior motives. So my question is, why do Black people, why do we feel the need to really spend so much time changing systems versus creating our own systems that work for us? And I think that this is always going to be a perpetual uphill battle.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that has to do with our own fear, at least it coming from the States. I can say we spend so much time fighting to be a part of that system to the point where it's like people don't even see another option, another way. When you start speaking in a manner of creating your own, people, you know, they think you're a rebel or you're being irrational, that's unrealistic. So I think a lot of it is just our own fear of kind of standing on our own 2 feet. And then I also do think the system of white supremacy is intentional, and it is a system that puts us in a position where you can't really establish your own. And even when you do, then things happen like they burn it down or they create new legislation to go against it. So I think it's a fear, and the system that we're currently under in the state is a system that definitely doesn't want us to step out on our own. I don't think it can survive without us being a part of it.
But do you really feel like defunding the police, Johnetta, is really going to change anything? Like, do you think this is going to be like a turning point in Black America?
No, I don't. I mean, I live in Accra, and my resolution is to repatriate. I don't really feel like going back and forth with people about the same thing that we've been going back and forth about since the beginning of our transporting us to that space. So I don't think defunding the police is going to do anything. They'll just come up with another way. Like the institution of white supremacy reinvents itself over and over and over again. It's like an energy. It's everything. The more people feed it, the more it lives and thrives, and it'll just recreate itself into something else. I mean, if you think about early slave catchers, which was the original police force, they weren't getting paid a whole bunch of money, but they were still out catching enslaved Africans or newly freed Africans and terrorizing them. So I don't think it'll do much. I mean, I hate to sound pessimistic, but like, I just throw the whole system away. That's how I feel.
Girl, and I think I love the term that you used when you said it's a whole energy.
It's a whole mood. If I write on that one, I think it's the energy is twofold. Because what I find is like Black Americans in many ways resemble the same mannerisms or mindset, so to speak, how they execute things as South Africans. Two particular groups who have been basically heavily oppressed. If you look at like the way that they are violent, so to speak, if you look at the way that kind of like they treat their women, so to speak, this is what different people are saying. And I'm also bringing in actual.
I used to live in South Africa. I used to live in South Africa for almost 2 years. And I used to tell people like South Africa feels like home. Like my host family felt like my cousins. Specifically the colored South Africans really, really like their cultures are very similar to African Americans. Like I felt most comfortable with colored South Africans. Those are the ones who traditionally were mixed race. But nowadays, I don't even know why they still call themselves colors, because a lot of them aren't actually mixed race anymore. It's like my great grandmother was mixed race, but both of your parents are Zulu now. So I don't, I don't know how that goes. But and when I was in South Africa, I never had to explain white supremacy to Black South Africans or colored people in South Africa because they already understood it. So our cultures are very like intermingled. Even when you listen to like their rap or like their house music, it has that same kind of soul and vibe that we have in our music. I mean, it's so similar. It's kind of scary how much our paths are very similar. And but that's the good thing for those who want to repatriate to South Africa. Like you don't have to always explain yourself. Like in Ghana, I'm always having to constantly
Yes.
explain my history, my existence, why you can't call me a white person, all these things. Whereas
Never.
the Black African people got it. Yeah, they
Yes.
just got it. And they were like, oh, okay, you're a Black American. Oh, okay, so you were African. Oh, okay, got it. Like even the knowledge of the slave trade is so much more widespread and understood than here. But I think that's because they have a close relationship. Like outside of African Americans and Black South Africans, what other group of African people have had to intermingle with white people in that much of a intertwined, way, weaved up way? Nobody else has really had to do that. So we, out of all people, know the inner workings of white supremacy very well because we've lived with them very in a very intimate manner. Whereas a lot of other Africans, even under colonialism, they were here, but it wasn't the intermingling that we have. It's very different. Yeah.
Yes. So with that being said, I think you've given us the perfect segue. But before we jump in there, this comment section is lit. You guys, please keep dropping these things in here because what O'Leary said. Let me make sure I get that right, sis. So what O'Leary says is the U.S. has a culture of crime and violence. White on white crime is much larger issue, and rates are used to make us think we are more criminal. This does not counteract that we should still focus on improving our plight. Excellent point. I think that, again, we do have certain tendencies and different things like that, but we've already known that that whole assumption that there's black on black crime more than there's anything else is brought down because basically we all, if you people who are closer to you are going to be the ones who will more likely be a victim of crimes by a certain type of person or a certain person.
Exactly.
So
And I think that you hit the nail on the head. It's not about black on black crime or white on white crime. It's about crime in general.
Oh, I didn't get it very well.
In the Black community, if we're looking at a holistic system, it's not, you can address black on black crime. You can address police brutality. You can address inequities in education. You can address all of these things at the same time if Black lives matter. You don't have to be so focused on one particular area. And that's sort of what I'm saying is that it seems as if there's not a holistic agenda. I think Johnetta is having some connection issues, so I'm sure she'll be back. But even I think that as we move into the next thing, another thing that I found very interesting is COVID cases are rising in the US. So those of you that don't know, I successfully made it home yesterday. Such a blessing to be back in Ghana. And I feel like I got out right on time because these COVID cases are crazy. And I think it's really going to change the way that we educate our children. And I think that there's going to continue to be a huge disparity in Black America. And I'm wondering how you think that's going to play out, Sean, and how that's going to work. And hopefully Johnetta will hop back on in just a moment when her connection is a little bit more stable and give her 2 cents as well.
How do I think that's going to affect us? It's going to affect us as just in the same way that you see COVID affect us in a way that is not equal. I believe that it will affect the education part the same way. And what I mean by that is that in many places, Black people still have a higher rate or a very high rate of poverty, meaning we don't have access to the things that we need. And us not having access to the things we need, what we have to look at is the fact that number one, because we run education programs in Africa through Ingressive. And what we find is that if people, especially if we're providing digital assets, if you don't have consistent access to internet, then you're not going to be able to leverage learning. If you don't have a stable home environment, if your parents don't understand what you're doing, all these different things where people don't understand how this process works and you don't have the resources to do it, you're not going to be able to engage and you're going to get left further and further and further behind. And now when things go back to normal, when we're going back to school and classrooms and different things like that, and you're taking these assessments, they're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt that, oh, COVID, you were unequally impacted by COVID. So we're going to get you a tutor and catch you up so you can stay within your grade. No, you're going to get left behind. And then you're going to have to deal with all of those, the mental anguish, the pressure, the social stigma that is, again, associated with being left behind. So that's kind of, if I'm just touching on the surface level, how I see it affecting us.
Yeah, I think you make some really good points there. And for me, I'm really interested. I know we've got some educators on board here watching us, but I'm also really interested in how this is going to play out in long term, particularly for the African American community. One thing I've always noticed is that people that are very aware of themselves or people that are more African focused typically already do homeschooling. And a lot of times it's because they say the history lessons, the other things we're getting, they just can't find it in the curriculum. I think that these people also realize that even the education system may not necessarily be set up for the support of Black students. So it's very interesting to sort of see how that goes as well and better understand what that is.
Awesome. I just want to give a couple of shout outs. So Nola, welcome to the group. Hope you're enjoying it. Aaron Mercer, again, Jackson State alumni. I'm just gonna keep saying Jackson State alumni every chance I get, just so y'all know.
We do make the best.
Jackson State University. But Aaron Mercer, she's given us some local intel. She's from Nashville, and she said that the local school system it's actually led by a Black female. And she just announced that they're taking an equity first approach to getting hotspots and laptops to students. She says she's very interested to see how it plays out. I am also interested in seeing how that plays out, and that's a good point. And that also speaks directly to the point that I was basically making, is that if we don't have the resources we need for success, then we're going to basically suffer. And again, nobody is really going to give us a benefit of the doubt or try to give us any type of extra resources to catch up, unless people like this Black woman superintendent in Nashville is basically making it a point to drive resources. And I cannot say enough, I am so proud of our Black women who are consistently at the forefront, consistently leading and pushing and making things happen. I know I'm not coming down on Black men. I know we're doing our part and we're playing our role. But again, I'm so proud of our Black women. And I get so hurt and get so crushed by seeing the way that they're mistreated in many ways when they're being on the front line. Aliri brought up that in CPS, they're doing the same thing, but policies and practices are not aligned. Again, another great point. We have to be aligned. Oh, I thought I was going to bring in Johnetta. She just dropped off again. Hopefully she'll bring it back, but it looks like this comment section is keeping it lit. Yeah. So with that being said, again, it is the major, it is us. It is us. We can go and ask whoever we want to ask to help us, but it's coming from a point of charity. And what you have to realize when it comes to charity is that even though things are changing and people are giving you certain things that you want, you are still not controlling the conversation. Meaning that when you are taking charity or when you're getting things changed upon pity, when people feel like they've given you enough, again, I'm using the rubber band thing. So when you stretch people to a certain extent where they're giving you something and supporting you, and you still seem to like, you want to complain past what they're willing to give you, you have that rubber band effect where things shoot back and they're like, oh, well, now I've given you too much, or now I've given you enough. I don't have to support or do anything else, or I've done my part, when we know this is a systematic problem that's been going on for over 400 years. Cordy, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. So yeah, you do see a lot of Black women in education as well. And I think that it is critical to really look at what is the role these women can play. I know here in Ghana, education is a huge sector. It's something where people are creating all types of private schools. I think there's this new curriculum. I think it's IBS or something like this that people are really into. So I think that education continues to be one of the major focuses for Black people. And I think that if we are more educated, then some of these other systemic issues will take care of themselves. But the thing is, I think, is how then do we use this opportunity with Corona to actually create a more Black focused education system that may actually work for our people, not only in the US, but I mean, even here in Africa, I know education is a huge focus. In most developing countries, education is a huge focus. So yes, it'll be really interesting to sort of see what opportunities come out of this educational sector. If you are thinking about homeschooling your children, if you know you're going to homeschool, can you just sort of like hit the like button for us. If you're not expecting schools to come back in September and you think that this is going to be it, how are you sort of feeling like this? Is it going to be a nervous thing as a parent? So I'm just really curious as well to what opportunities can actually come out of this.
Me as well. I want to highlight one more opportunity.
By the way,
and also
welcome back,
give a
Johnetta.
shout out to Mr. Kwabena. Welcome back. Your shirt is popping, by the way. I love that design pattern, everything.
Thank you.
Your slang.
The art.
But what I want to say, Kwabena is actually based in Atlanta. And creating one of the first exchange programs between historically Black colleges and universities universities in Africa. So basically what he's doing is, please, if it hasn't been confirmed, please let me know in the chat, Kwabena, if you're following along. But what he's actually doing is he's working with Morgan State, and they're going to do an exchange program between, I can't remember what university it is, but they're doing one in Ghana, Accra, I believe. And I think those are the steps that we have to take. And now that we have you here, I think we've introduced a really interesting dynamic. And what I wanted to touch on right before you dropped off is that, especially when we were talking about that relationship between South Africans and Americans, Black Americans in particular, being one that's more comfortable. I feel like why it's so uncomfortable with other ethnicities within the African continent is simply because is based on the education. What I find is that when people were educated in Africa, they kind of gloss over the slave trade. So Africans are not really able to identify with, when I say, like, have you heard about buck breaking? That particular practice. Go Google it if you don't know what it is. But when I basically break down in detail what these plantation masters were doing as far as buck breaking, they're almost sickened by the type of things that were done and that they were just not made aware of. Now, if you shift over to the Black American perspective, I can probably count on one hand, if maybe two fingers, how many different African characters or people that I was taught about. We were not really educated about the African continent, and this continuously contributes to that disconnect that Black Americans and Africans have. And I think that we are told that they don't like us, when truly I think it's more so the fact that we're just not connected. And we're not connected because we don't understand each other. So I say all that to kick it back to you, Johnetta, and ask you this question in particular. This is what on our schedule of speakers. How do you feel that a Eurocentric education impacts Black minds?
Well, I think I know it keeps you feeling inferior, because what happens is you don't see how your group of people have contributed to the world. So while in Ghana, I've heard young people say and argue with me about how Africans haven't contributed anything to technology. We haven't contributed anything to the world. What have we done? Even in the States, even though it's not vocalized, you can tell it in our demeanor, behavior. I would notice it in how my students would respond to me versus how they would respond to a white teacher. Like whatever the white teacher would say would be golden. And I'm like, well, I already told you that, but until their white history teacher said it, it was like what Ms. Abraham said didn't matter. So you start to not trust your own people. You don't trust your own thinking and your judgment. You're constantly depending on other people for validation. I mean, I think it's really detrimental to us, honestly, which is why I'm very pro African centered education. Like, you have to know who you are. And I think I was fortunate because my parents grew up in the civil rights era. One of my parents never went to an integrated school, and the other, her school was integrating her senior year.
Wow.
So they always had this because my father never went to an integrated school, and basically my mother either. During those times, there was a constant awareness of your culture and who you were as a Black American. So for me, they just kind of passed that down to me. Like, I always had Black dolls. I always had, Tom Joyner used to make those little Black history fact books. Like, they would always buy me those. They would always buy me books with Black people in it. They would always tell me about the history of our family and our community in our hometown, which is Charlotte, North Carolina. So I was never confused. Like they would tell me, oh, this used to be an all black school, but they tore it down. Now you see that little plaque. They promised they would build us a new one, but they never did. Like it was always a constant learning process. And then I went to Howard. So it was like, you know, on 1,000.
Howard ain't JSU though. No,
You said what?
Howard's not JSU, but we're gonna let you slide.
It's not, I'm sorry, you know, but you know, it really helped because at the end of the day, like I left, in addition to my parents, I left being very rooted in who I was as an African-American woman. And a lot of us don't get that. The same way here on the continent, a lot of us are using British Cambridge curriculum, American IB curriculum, and all of those really don't have a trace of us. World history, literally, when you think about world history and how it's taught in the States, we are speaking about China, we're speaking about a slither of India. We might talk about world religions, but not one of those world religions will be an African traditional spiritual system. We will speak about Africa, but only about the ancient empire of Mali, Shanghai, and there's one more, ancient Egypt, which they have, you know, whitewashed Kemet. So it's critical. Like our people just don't know. And because of that, we don't see how we're valuable to the world and we carry ourselves as inferior people. And that's just simply not true.
So I think this was a really great opportunity. Once again, welcome to Abroad While Black, where we meet every Saturday to share stories of Black people that live around the world. For those of you who don't know, I made it back to Ghana. You have to do a 14-day quarantine. So the little and I are in close quarters today. So don't know if Sean has it on gallery view or not, but you'll have to excuse the fact she is breastfed. So you'll have to work with me. We'll try to do minimum exposure because we don't want to be reported to Facebook. But Johnetta, if you can please maybe just talk a little bit about your background.
You see how centered. I'm sorry, make one point. This is a part of that lack of African-centered education. When you live in Africa, every woman around here is breastfeeding. When I tell women that I was not breastfed, they look at me like, what's wrong with you? Was something wrong with your mother? She couldn't produce milk? Like they're so confused. And because we don't know ourselves, we're in the States thinking, oh, I need to cover my breasts. Come back home, y'all. You can breastfeed all day.
Exactly. I'm not gonna lie. There were 2 specific body parts that I saw more than I ever thought that I would see when I moved to the continent. We're not going to talk about what happens in the roadside gutters, but breastfeeding was something that breastfeeding was something that it was like, at first it was like, put that away. But at some point it was like, wait a minute now, this is for the child. And if there's a problem in that situation, I am the problem. And I took that to America as well, but you just don't see it as much. But well done. More power to you, Cordy.
Thank you. And keep well satisfied too. It keeps everybody happy today. It keeps everybody happy. I don't know if you want us to call you Johnetta or Nzali on this particular interview. So please just sort of correct us as we go along. I want to make sure we respect your name choice. But just maybe give us a little bit of your history and your background as an educator and how you sort of made that move from North Carolina into Ghana.
Okay, well, you can call me either or. My parents named me Johnetta after my father, so I always respect that. And after my womanhood rites of passage, I had an initiation name that was Nzali. So either one I answer to, so it's okay. But basically, I've been in education for about 10 years now. Right out of university, I joined Teach for America. And I did that because my degree is in political science. And I was told that, you know, I would have to take additional coursework in order to teach. And I was like, no, like I want to teach now. So I joined Teach for America because it's like an alternative certification type of program. And so since then, I have taught in, of course, my home state, North Carolina, but I've also taught in Washington, D.C. I've taught in South Africa. I've taught in Ghana. I forgot. My first 2 years, I was teaching in Florida, in Jacksonville. Okay. So I've kind of bounced around a bit, but I've always been an English teacher, global perspectives teacher / world history. I've coached debate, flag team, all that kind of stuff. It's my passion. Let me tell you exactly how I got into it. When I was at Howard, we have a middle school on campus, Howard University, School of Mathematics and Science. And so all of the University of Education, or excuse me, Department of Education students usually do their student teaching at the middle school. I was just there because I needed extra money and my homegirl worked there. So she got me a job, but I was interning under a lady named Miss Kimberly Worthy. If you all don't know her, look her up. Amazing educator. She was like DC's Teacher of the Year in 2009. And just interning under her, I was like, oh, this is how I can help my community, because she was so impactful for me, everybody that she was around. And I was just like, wow. So from there, I was like, I'm not going to law school. I want to teach. And this is how I can literally touch people in real time. Because with law, I just felt like it takes too long. Whereas when I'm in the classroom, I see you every day or every other day if you're teaching in secondary school. And it's very, very important that those who are in the classrooms understand the position and the weight that they carry. Like, you're not just filling space, like you become a part of the child's narrative. And that's why I entered into this. That's why I've stayed in it. And I think the most rewarding part has been teaching on the continent of Africa, because in the States, I kind of lost my passion for it after a while. I went into the nonprofit sector for like a year and a half. But when I went to South Africa, the amount of light and passion that the kids have for learning, that like gave me life. And so I was like, I can do this for another 10 years, you know, and being in Ghana and teaching the same type of thing, the appreciation that people have for educators and what you contribute to the society has been life-changing for me. So that's just a little bit of my background. And of course, while I'm here, I also noticed there was a lot of miscommunication between Africans from the diaspora and continental Africans. So my sister and I started H.E.R Collective, and we do these social mixers and different events where we're getting each other together and really what we call edutainment. We're educating each other, but also entertaining each other and having fun. And so that's just an extension.
Yeah. Before we move, because I really want to spend just some time dedicated on her, because it is amazing what you guys do using your edutainment. One of the things that just stuck out to me is you mentioned that you were actually like sort of losing your passion in the education field. And I hear so many Black educators say that. Why do you think so many Black educators feel this way in the system? And what were some of the differences you saw as an educator when you moved abroad?
Well, I think the first part is there is a lack of freedom. I always worked in turnaround schools, or Title I schools, as some states may call it. And those are the schools that a lot of our children are in. So they're heavily policed by the state. A lot of them are like 2 steps from being closed down or something like that. So it's a big, big focus on testing. They try to cripple your creativity. A lot of it is not teaching the truth. So you would have to like teach what was in the curriculum. And then for me, I would go back and be like, now that's what they're going to tell you on the test. But this is what really happened. And I was an English teacher, but I used my English class as a means to teach history. So all the texts that we talked about had historical context, and that was my way of re-educating my own people. So it's just, there's a lot of pressure put on tests. There's not enough, especially in Black schools. I can't speak about other places because I didn't work in those schools. But inner city Black schools, it's like no real focus on helping the child, no real focus on their well-being. And our kids are facing a lot. And you get very, like, I feel a lot. So I would get very tired because it's like, I would pick up on the energy of my students. So it's like this, you have to be light all the time. And it's so heavy. So it becomes a lot. And then you're fighting administration. Like I had to fight one of my schools about doing a novel study for 8th graders in DC. And I was like, but the kids told me they never finished the whole novel. So how can I send them to high school knowing they've never completed a full novel in their life? And I'm their English teacher and you want to fight me about it. I literally had to sit down with my AP and show him how everything that we were doing aligned to the Common Core standards, how we were doing extension activities. Like, that shouldn't be, so it becomes a lot, and you just know that people really don't have your people's best interest at heart. So it's like you're fighting the system, and then our kids are also traumatized. So then you're like fighting that part, and it can be heavy. It really can be heavy.
Wow. I think if you're an educator and you're on and you sort of hit some of these sentiments, please hit the heart button or the like button, just so that we know that you understand some of these challenges that Johnetta faced. So another thing you said is that, I mean, you've taught all over, you've taught in South Africa, you've taught here in Ghana. You're from North Carolina. You said your parents were very Afrocentric, very focused on letting you know the truth. What would you say are some of your biggest benefits as an educator here in Ghana, and how do you think, or are there resources that you recommend that if other educators are interested in making the move, what's sort of the easiest segue, or how do they actually do that? What are the resources available to them?
Okay. Well, the benefit of teaching in Ghana is that in Ghana in general, like, there are rules, but then there are other rules, and like there's always a way around things. So if you are a very creative educator, then this is a great space for you, because there's so much room for you to create programming, to bring your ideas forth. The system is not oversaturated with ideas. So some of the things that you are willing to do will be very forward thinking, and there's space for you to do it. The only thing is that the financial resources are not abundant. So you're really going to have to be creative to get your things up and moving and off the ground. But if you're interested in working in education in Ghana, honestly, the government sector is kind of locked in. Like, Ghanaians have that one on lock. And I feel rightfully so, they should, because we don't want to come and like take people's jobs either. So the government sector is pretty much set in stone. Ghanaians who go to the teachers' colleges then transition into GES, and they go from there. And also, I don't think a lot of diasporans will be okay with the salary that comes with working in the government sector. So, I don't really usually suggest that one to people. But if you're interested, we have international schools here. We also have private schools here. A lot of the international schools give some type of package deal. So that's something that you should probably look into. But also note that a lot of our international schools use the British Cambridge curriculum. So you really are going to have to sell yourself if you're coming from the States, unless you're going to a school that's using the American IB curriculum. So IB teachers are in high demand. Those who have a little exposure with Cambridge are in high demand. There's also another sector that people don't really pay attention to. That's adult learning. There's a lot of Francophone students in Ghana learning English. So there's a lot of language schools that pop up that people can work for. So even for myself, there's a lady named Anita who has a language school out in La Paz area, or excuse me, not La Paz, Achimota. And she only works with Francophone Africans, as they would say, those who are coming from French-speaking African countries. And she does online learning, and she also does, well, pre-corona, she had people who would come into the country. And then a lot of these international organizations who have French-speaking Africans would send people to her to better their English skills. These are people who already have degrees, but their English speaking skills they just need a little work. So that's another sector that you could, squeeze on into. But I think and then the NGO sector. There's a number of organizations that are around that work with GES and other forms of education. So there's a lot of opportunities, but you just kind of have to be here and start networking with people to know what's here. I think a lot of us who are specialists, like my school, we are an inclusive school, but we take students with mild to high severe special needs. We need specialists, right? We need people who know about dyslexia, who know about autism, who work with children who have Down syndrome. If you're a specialist teacher, Ghana is the place for you, because there's just not a lot of people who specialize in very unique things. Speech therapists, physiotherapists, all of those people, counselors. Like having a school counselor is almost non-existent in the Ghana public sector. And even in the private schools, a lot of them
Wow.
don't have a counsel team.
Wow. That's really interesting that you know that, to know that. And I think you hit on the head, is that sometimes people look at the very obvious opportunities, but they don't look at some of those hidden gems. So another thing you talked about is salaries. I think teachers feel already that they're underpaid in Ghana. And you mentioned that, okay, when you come to Ghana, maybe public sector isn't good, but maybe private sector. Would you say that working, like if you get on at a private school, it's comparable? Is it better? How would you see yourself as a position as a teacher when you were teaching in the public school system in the US versus teaching here in a private school system?
So my way into the education system here was very different. When I first came to Ghana, I just came and started doing consulting. That's how I ended up at the school that I'm at. So initially, I was going around to different schools through people that I knew, showing them, my training packages for their new staff members, all of that type of stuff. But the school that I'm in is a private school. We fall under the international category, although I think most of our students are locally based, but we do have a few embassy kids and things like that. I would say the private sector would be more comfortable for you, because if you're working for an international school and you're coming from abroad, then they're going to offer you some type of package. And if not, you need to request it. So that usually includes housing, or at least a stipend for housing, a flight home for some of them. Some of them don't, but some of them do, or you can negotiate for it depending on how qualified you are. So it's a little bit more of an easier transition. Whereas when I came, I was on my own. I was winging it. Well, not really winging it, but
Girl,
I was just kind of like,
I know all about that.
I was just finding where I fit in. But if you're looking for a very smooth transition, I say go with the international private schools. It will be a little bit more comfortable for you. It won't be so much of a culture shock based on the students that you'll be teaching. And it'll just be easier. I'm being honest, it'll be a lot easier. The government sector, when it comes to salaries, you are not going to be paid what you're paid in the States. Let's just be very clear about that. You probably are not going to be paid the same as teachers who are going into Dubai and those Middle Eastern countries either. This is Ghana, this is Africa. But if you're working at an international private school, you will be paid a comfortable wage for our economic system. So just know that, no, you're not going to be getting $30,000 a year or $50,000 a year, $60,000 a year, but what you are making is very comfortable for this space, especially if you're not paying rent, which most of the schools who are international schools do provide housing for their staff that is coming from outside. So, but I will say, and this is unfortunate, as African Americans who are coming into the international sector here, a lot of the schools are faith-based. So if you are not in alignment with one of the two major faith systems here, Christianity or Islam, you need to be cognizant of that. You may be working at a Christian-based school or Islamic-based school, and you want to know that. So that may, and there's no separation. So you may be required to attend prayer or Wednesday service or mosque or something like that. There are also some private schools that aren't faith-based, but there are some that are. And you just need to know that. And then also, sometimes people have an idea that international teachers are white teachers. I know when I went to South Africa, I faced that. My first school, they said they're getting an American. The principal had told the community that they were getting a white person. And I showed up and he had to, say, oh, she's still an American. And it didn't help that people in South Africa thought I looked South African. So they were like,
it's like, guess who's coming
she's
to dinner?
Just from, they were like, she's just from Joburg, But in Ghana, again, you do have to kind of wiggle around that a little sometimes. People might expect, you will be a white American, but If you're qualified, show and prove. And it's also your responsibility to still teach African people here what is the truth about us there. So I would say take that into consideration too. But salary wise, you can be comfortable at an international school, hands down.
I think you brought
Now,
up a really good point.
I'm sorry, the difference is in the Middle East, a lot of teachers there, because I've had friends who have taught there. Some of them have transitioned to Ghana, some are still there. The biggest difference there is that usually their salary, they make enough to where they're able to save. In Ghana, unfortunately, I don't think that international schools pay enough for you to live very comfortable here and save a lot of money. If your intention is to go back. But I think here you can make enough to live comfortable here, just not enough to like go back with a big stack of money. I don't think that's realistic.
Yeah. Again, you brought up a lot of great points. I think one of the ones that you really touched on that will make sense is I know that when you're perusing jobs and you see what the salary is and you see some deplorably low salary, we really do have to, like, you brought in the point that was really good, which is cost of living. The cost of living in Ghana is far lower than it is in America. And then when you add on to the point that they kind of do give what we call expatriate packages, where they should be covering, so like some of the ones I've gotten where they cover my housing, I have somebody in the house cleaning, I get a vehicle, and then the vehicle I have a driver, and then security for the house and different stuff like that. By international standards, the housing that they put you in has to be at a certain level and different things like that. So in one way, where you save money in one place, I mean, there's a balance. Again, I don't think it's still an equal amount, but then again, don't really hear teachers in America bragging about the salary.
But I
what I
will
want
say
to
this,
do
you know,
is
if you are,
take this
if you
back
have
to
the
the
oh,
section.
sorry.
Oh no, we're here for you. Go ahead, please. Don't let me interrupt your movement.
If you have the opportunity to work in a rural school, I strongly encourage you to do that at least 1 year. I was a Peace Corps volunteer. That's why I was in South Africa. So of course, you know, Peace Corps puts you in the bush. And so, but that was the best teaching experience I've had in my life. Like the ingenuity of the students, the ingenuity that I had to create as a teacher, because I literally just didn't have things. So now when I'm training, so I do some training work with Lead for Ghana, which is like the Ghana version of Teach for America. And they're saying, well, I have 60 kids in my classroom. I don't know how I can do centers. I'm like, oh, let me get you my video from South Africa. Boop, boop. This is how you can do it. It can happen. So if you can, it really will make you a stronger, firmer, more creative teacher. If just 1 year you teach in the rural area, you know, or a semester, because it'll fine tune the skills that you've been learning in the States, and it'll force you to be more flexible. So then when you go to your posh international school and the power goes out, you won't even worry about that, because you've taught without power before every day. And you will
and I know
know
Sean wants to
how
do shout outs quickly, but before we talk about the H.E.R, is that I noticed there's a large number of American universities that are popping up in Ghana, and I'm sure on other places of the continent as well. Are there also opportunities if you're looking at teaching at the collegiate level? Are there things that maybe you think American educators can also bring into that space as well? And then Sean, we'll let you do your shout outs, because I know you've been forever. Thanks.
I just did a webinar about employability in Ghana in the education sector. And one of the women we had on was from Webster. She's the campus director there, Christine. And then there's another woman that I know here, Kosawa, who's at Academic City. But Webster specifically is an American university that has a branch here. And so they actually are currently hiring. So if you have a PhD, you're looking to work at a university here in Ghana, she is currently hiring. I have that little listing so I can shoot it over to you. But yes, and so at the university level, it's really nice because they do adjunct professors. So people who can come in for just a semester or 2 semesters and then go, or people who specialize in a topic and they're here for just a short time and then they go. And with those universities, they will provide housing, all of that type of stuff they're going to do because they're a university. So if you are a person who has a PhD or a master's degree and is eligible to teach at a collegiate level, please do it, because there's so many opportunities here in Ghana for that. University of Ghana always has guest professors. Ashesi University, like, first of all, Ashesi is the bomb. They even collect their own rainwater and solar power their whole school. I'm like, amazing.
Yeah,
Shout out to that
especially
brother. So they're always
and they're
looking
sponsored by the
for people.
MasterCard Foundation too. Like we have some
Yes.
amazing up and coming private colleges here.
Yeah. So if you are one of those people, then definitely just Google like the universities that are in Ghana or American-based universities that have a campus in Ghana. And those sites usually are operational because they're college-based sites. So they kind of stay up to date. So I would say that's at least a way to get your foot in, because a lot of getting positions in Ghana is who you know. So if you come in as an adjunct professor for just a semester, while you're here, you can start networking to see where you can find a permanent position, and do that while on the ground, which is the best way to do it, because people here like to see you face to face. They don't really like emails and phone calls.
Yeah, it's very true. So let me jump right in here. Let me give a shout out to Lizzie. I really appreciate you coming back again. Eliza as well. There's some amazing comments, but I'm gonna skip straight to the question. So the two questions that I have are, how does licensing work? And after that question, what kind of education materials are needed?
Okay, so the first one, if you are working in the government sector, if you are a basic school teacher, there's a certain examination that you have to take. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I know that there's a certain examination that you have to take to be qualified to teach basic education. So your licensure basically won't like transfer. And in the government sector in general, like they're really looking for Ghanaians. So let me just stop talking about GES because that's the way their system is set up. It's not really set up for people outside to come in with licensure. They don't even have processes for that really. So let's say the private school, international school sector. The good thing about Ghana is people are very flexible. Even if you're not licensed in the States, but you have been teaching for a number of years, you can still come here and work. You just have to be able to either provide like your praxis scores, or depending on what state you're in, whatever examination you all take to prove competency in your subject area, bring that with you. Although I will say, nobody has ever really looked at my credentials. Like outside of me bringing my degree, and even though I would have everything, no one ever really looked at it intensely. They just kind of, because I came referred by someone that they knew. Exactly. They were like, and then usually I would always request myself to do some type of like mock teaching or a mock presentation, or when I would meet them, I would just do a presentation for what I can offer. And I think that would win people over, and they would just be like, oh, okay, we don't really need to see that. We know she can do what she says she can do. But a lot of the international schools will take you through a standard interview process. You'll have to send your CV. You'll have to send your proof of your transcripts. You know, they usually want an official one, or at least if you can get a copy that's clean. If you have a license in the States, great. For those who teach IB, you do have to have the IB licensure, because you know, IB is an international curriculum, so they can't just have anybody teaching it. You have to have that certification. But if you're not doing IB or AP, then honestly, whatever license you have, I don't want to say that it doesn't mean much.
I love the hair flip before you said that, by the way. You're like, whatever license you have, flip hair.
I mean, it means something, but like, honestly, it's more about the connection and you proving that you can do the work. To be honest, because a lot of people, they just look at your CV, they look at your degree, they look at how many years in your references that you have, and they kind of go from there. And most places here will give you a trial period, and Ghana's employment system is kind of cutthroat. Like, people will fire you, right? So if you really aren't meeting the bar within those like 90 days or whatever the stipulation is, some people are 6 months, whatever it is, then they might let you go. But if you have your license, come with it. It can only help you. But to be honest, there are a lot of people who work here who've never shown their license. Or if you're in the States and like in the States, if you work at like a magnet school or a charter school, a lot of those schools don't require you to even have a license. You just need a degree in the subject that you're working with. So you can definitely come and your experience will speak for yourself. Now, those who are counselors or like very specific practitioners, you need to bring your licensure.
Okay, great. So shout out to Noble Drew Bay for joining. Real quick, Johnetta, because we have the second question as well. What type of educational materials are needed or could people potentially create to bring into the system?
We need, in the international school sector, a lot of things are provided, but any type of technology, any type of assistive devices for students, like those little pens that can, for students who have dyslexia that can, you can follow the text and it'll read it aloud for them. Sticky notes, highlighters, like quality highlighters, things like that. But really, really, really assistive technology for students who struggle, students who have mild needs or even severe needs. Those things are like non-existent. My school brings in everything from outside, either through donation or when our international teachers travel outside, we'll be sent with money to buy up things and bring it back. So any type of assistive technology, computers, iPads, all of that kind of stuff, we really, really, really need and would value a lot. And then also literature that has a reflection of African people in it is critical. So if you are a author and you make books about young Black children around the world or minority children around the world, diverse reading materials is critical. We just don't have a lot of it. Even when we're doing folk tales, a lot of the literature is coming from the UK. Which is crazy to me because there's so much folklore in Ghana. You would think that there would be literature based around that, but there's not a lot of it just floating around. And that's diversified, just like not everybody's in the village, everybody's a product of child marriage type of books, but like real literature that kind of show Black girl magic, Black boy magic would be great.
And then also, if people are out there creating curriculums or specializing in curriculums, is there an opportunity for them as well? Because you were saying most things are already provided.
Yes, so that means you're going to have to work with the Department of Education, which is the government. And the government in Ghana is very slow to get things going unless there's some money that people can. You live here, unless
It's true,
people can get a little money off the top of it, then they might push your concept through. But the positive side of this is that people aren't double checking on you. So you can come in with your own books for your own classroom and be like, listen, this is what we're going to learn today. As long as your kids do well on their examinations and their parents are happy. And unfortunately, their child is speaking really good English. Most people aren't really going to bother you the day-to-day with what you're doing in your classroom. So you really have flexibility. But you will, of course, you do have to teach the curriculum, but you can always go above and beyond with the extra materials you have. That's what's going to make you stand out at your school or whichever institution that you're at. And although there's a curriculum, sometimes it doesn't come with materials because like,
You're breaking up a bit. Johnetta, you're breaking up a bit.
And your students are on those books are not, and the bookstores are curriculums are coming from outside. They have to be shipped in. So even when it comes to materials, a lot of those things, there's just not an abundance of it really. So you can come in with your own thing and just supplement the curriculum. I would say really try that and use that. Can you hear me now? Okay, yeah.
Courtney, you're muted.
Oh yeah,
I'm sorry, they were talking about, yes, people have curriculums, but basically it doesn't come with materials. Can you just recapture those thoughts for those that missed it?
Yeah, so when you're teaching the Cambridge curriculum or IB curriculum, things like that, those books for those particular curriculums have to be shipped into Ghana. So really there's like select bookstores that sell those materials. So what happens is, let's say Kingdom Books in Osu runs out, or all the Kingdom Books have run out of the IGCSE math books. Then you have to wait for the next order to come into the country because those books aren't produced here. So it's not like an abundance of materials that the way people would think, even though people are using these curriculums on a consistent basis. And a lot of these programs update their curriculums, which means we have to update the books, which means families have to buy new books. It's just a very different system. You know, everything here people pay for out of pocket and it goes home with them. Whereas in the States, when you're talking about, like in Florida, I used to teach in Florida, Sunshine State Standards, all of those, it came with the whole books, right? Your math, your English, your science,
exactly.
And it stays at the school. But here, that's not the case. The family that bought the book takes the book and they take it home with them and it's gone. So the next year, new students have to buy whatever the updated version of the book is, which is sometimes a struggle, again, because the books aren't produced here.
That's interesting. You know, me as an entrepreneur, Boo, I just saw a huge opportunity to open up a new and exchange book emporium for students. This is something we currently don't have in Ghana, but I'm giving that idea out for free. I'm not even going to ask for stocks or shares in your company unless you need me to help you register. But I just see this as a huge opportunity since you're talking about the lack of resources. So I want to make sure that we get a chance to talk about the H.E.R Collective as well, because this is something you mentioned that you and Afia, your sister, started. So can you like tell us, what is the H.E.R Collective? What does H.E.R stand for? What is your mission? And how are you connecting the gaps between Africans here on the continent and those in the diaspora?
So our sole purpose with H.E.R Collective is to bridge the gap between Africans at home, for us in the diaspora, and continental Africans. And the way that we do that is through what we call edutainment, education and entertainment combined. So we host a number of different programs. Some of them are social, some of them are more on the business investment venture side, but all of it together is basically helping us reintroduce ourselves to each other, become acquainted so that we can move and elevate to the next level. So H.E.R stands for Helping Elevation Rise. Collective, because in Africa, everything is a collective effort, all hands on deck. And we literally sit in our rooms and we think about all the instances where we've had miscommunication living here as a repatriate. And we create programming around that, where we invite both parties and we discuss, we have fun. We pull in people from different business ventures, business sectors, so that people kind of have the information. Because I think a big part of our breakdown between the two is that we don't have information, lack of information, or misinformation. And then we just don't know each other. So with H.E.R, we literally get people together, introduce them to each other in multiple different settings. So we have our icebreaker social mixer, which is like a game night with a twist. It's all about cross-cultural dialogue, but it's through different games. So we do like charades and, Soul Train lines and all those things, but it's all centered around our cultural differences.
I know the Soul Train line is interesting because African dancing versus American dancing, I can only envision this.
Yes. So we have a really good DJ. Shout out to our DJ. He's the old DJ at Kiki B's. And because we sat down with him beforehand and we purposely and intentionally told him, like, you have to mix the music from the two. So like one of the songs, let's say we hitting the Dougie down the Soul Train line. The next one, we going to Zonto. And people getting to see like, okay, the shoulder movement, okay, it's a little different, but we here with the shoulders, but it's intentional. It's very intentional. One time we did the charades where people had to pick a tribe right? So people had to act out without words another tribe. We thought it
Oh,
might go a little
interesting.
disrespectful, but people kept it real classy. But
Spicy.
And for those of y'all who don't know, tribes in Africa are like
because
black and white.
you know, people like things like someone very much so. And so we do things like that. We do things just all time word association where we'll throw out lyrics from songs and just ways to get us to enjoy each other and get familiar with each other, but without it being a pressure, put pressure on it, without it being a lecture. Because people like to have fun. People want to eat, people want to drink, people want to have a good time. Black people like doing those things. So why not do it, but make it purposeful? So that's our social mixer. This year, COVID has slowed us down a little bit on our business network link ups, but we started doing our chat with her webinars where we're talking about how to find jobs here in Ghana. We're also going to be doing investment webinars as well for different sectors. So if you're interested in investing in one of those sectors that we will discuss, then you'll leave with like direct contact information and how-to steps on getting things started and off the ground. And we also connect people with those who do relocation consultations. We are not doing those right now, but we would definitely direct you to a few sisters that we know who do that work, and they're legit, and you're not going to like, you know, get scammed or anything like that. Like they will really help you. And then we also have a program for the youth, our Rites of Passage program.
Uh-oh.
And that's
Johnetta, I think it's breaking up.
geared around into womanhood. Hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Can you
So
hear
if
me
you
now?
can just start with talking about the youth program.
Yes, the Rites of Passage program is for right now is young women. We've been trying to get young men, but it's hard to find elder men who are committed to seeing the process through, but we're still working on it. But with the young women, it's preteen ages. We're ushering them into their womanhood, kind of very similar to the Ghanaian tradition, the Krobo girls, when they do their rites of passage initiation, when they're their puberty rites. But we do it with our culture added into it. So a lot of our girls are from the diaspora, and some of them are from here, but maybe their parents, one of their parents is from the diaspora. And so we kind of mix the cultures, like we updating it. You know, we're updating it, making it something that all of us can enjoy, reintroducing ourselves to some traditional African practices, and kind of making it okay to not be afraid to be proudly African. That's the whole kind of gist of the rites of passage. It is a commitment though. It's 9 months. Those girls go through a 9-month pregnancy of themselves and
That's a
rebirthing.
pregnancy, girl. That's a pregnancy.
Yeah, and they meet every month. Yeah, I mean, it's serious. It's a really big commitment, but it's important, especially for people who have youth who are from the diaspora who now live in Ghana. They need that kind of introduction and like integration outside of just school, you know? So that's really what that focuses on. But we are forever evolving. We've done like natural hair expos and just all types of stuff. So we're forever evolving. But the sole purpose is to get us back intertwined together, create kinship, and move our generations forward as a united front as opposed to different pockets.
And I know one of the things you were saying is that you guys, I've seen as well that you've been hosting some webinars on different sectors, how to find employment, this type of thing in Ghana. So how do people participate in that? How do they get the information on that? If they want to participate in one of your webinars, or if they want to learn on the specific topic.
So if you want to find the old webinars, you can go on our Facebook page, H.E.R Collective Ghana. H.E.R is an acronym. And so we always, Facebook Live or stream to Facebook Live. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but they're always posted there. Yeah, so they're there. And then if you want to participate or just find more information about what we have going on, you can go to our website, hercollective.org. and send us like a little message there, or you can do it through the Facebook as well. Either way, it will reach us on our Instagram, her_collective. All of those we check, it comes directly to our phone, and we definitely will get back with you on that. So any of those options are ways to get in contact with us. If you her collective, you can enjoy. The next one is agriculture.
I think you're breaking up there, Johnetta.
Will be announcing the date of that soon. We're just trying to more panelists.
Okay,
You know,
you're
it's
breaking up
Saturday,
a little bit.
so
Yeah,
people
it's
are all
fine.
at. Oh,
You're breaking up a little bit, but we'll get those resources and post them in the comments as well, because we've got about 10 more minutes. So one thing I want to briefly discuss with you is the hype around repatriation to Ghana and citizenship and free land. And girl, it's just so easy.
The
Like,
misinformation. Let's talk about that.
so, I mean, talk to me just a little bit about your experience on these levels, and how feasible do you think it is just for people just to sort of pop up and be like, hey, I'm here, I'm getting citizenship, and you're giving me a piece of land to build on.
First of all, nothing in Ghana is free. Nothing in Ghana is free. So if somebody's telling you they're giving you free land, don't trust it. I'm just saying. And if there is some free land and I just don't know about it, you need to thoroughly double check. You need to go down to Lands Commission. You need to meet the chief in that area. You need to talk to the neighbors.
Get a surveyor, your own surveyor, not one someone gave you.
Yeah, like it really needs to be double checked. But when it comes to repatriation, I am of the belief that not everybody should or has to repatriate, because it's not easy. It is not easy leaving your culture, most of the time your family, and starting something new in another place. I think for people like you and I, we are the people who are clearing the land. And everybody shouldn't come to clear the land, right? There's people who are tasked to do certain things. So
speak it, boo. Speak it.
Those who are coming, we're clearing the land, fine. Maybe after we've cleared it, then the next phase of, for those who need a little bit more comfortability, you come and you start building on the land. But for those who are okay with weeding and clearing it out, come. I welcome you. I think you should come. Those who are not, and you know you're not, then it just creates another negative narrative. So I actually don't really welcome those folks, if I'm just being honest.
So,
but
I think
it's not
I was gonna
easy.
say, so when you say negative narrative, can you just elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yes, you know, you have people on all these repatriation groups or people who want to leave who will say they came and, oh, the power's out every day and it's so behind and it's just Ghanaians this and Africans that, as if they're not African. And it's like, we already know we're in a space where we're developing. The same way we are dealing with post-slave traumatic stress syndrome is the same way people here are dealing with post-colonialism, right? So it's two sides. Yeah, well, current. Yes. So it's two sides of the same coin. So if you're coming here, please understand that, like, yes, there are development things that need to take place. We don't have all the answers coming from outside, but we can be a part of coming up with solutions to help. And so that should be your focus. If that's not your focus, then this phase of repatriation probably isn't for you, right? Because that's the phase that we're in. But however, in Ghana, when it comes to citizenship, because I see a lot of things about the citizenship, and I'm one of the people who received citizenship. It was an executive order, which means that there is not, but that's a lengthy process, right? But a quick process to citizenship in Ghana for Africans of the diaspora is not in existence as of today. Now, we are lobbying and petitioning government and putting our foot on their neck about it. All of us who recently have received citizenship, I encourage all of us to register to get our voter registration cards so that we can start to put pressure on the appropriate MPs and government officials so that we can have a standardized process, but we just don't have it right now. So what we have is two presidents, the current president and the former President Mahama, who have issued executive orders of citizenship and gifted it to us, right? Even though some people don't feel like we should be gifted, it's our birthright, whatever you want to call it. It was a gift because they didn't have to do it, right?
Amen.
So they gifted it to us. It is our responsibility, those who have the citizenship now, to make best use of it and become great advocates and lobbyists for our other Africans of the diaspora. But then also for those who are coming, know that like, no, you just won't get citizenship right away. But you can come, you can set up business, you can live your best life and be a part of the numbers that help us petition for this to be something that is standard. So what I noticed about other communities of people in Ghana, they set up communities and they are contributing in real, tangible, numerical ways.
Monetary.
Our community, yes,
Ain't
our
nothing free, like
community,
you said.
yeah, our community feels like, I mean, and of course, we do have a connection to the continent and that should be respected and honored and understood. I agree with that wholeheartedly, but I also understand we're living in 2020 and people want to see the numbers. So when we're coming, we need to be coming with like a very clear understanding and purpose and vision. Like, I'm coming to set up business. I'm coming to expand another Ghanaian's business so that when people like the Ministry of the Future or BADA or whatever other agencies are lobbying on our behalf to government and to the African Union, we can say, this is how many people we have here who have business. They employ this amount of people. They bring in this amount of revenue. Right now, we can't do that. But people are trying. People are working in that direction. So
I think
that's my summary.
I think you mentioned something very strong as well, is that, again, a good point of what this group is for is you need to build a network to get that can give you a soft landing in places that you're interested in. So again, I know I consider myself part of the crew that was kind of clearing the brush so, other people can come in, but I did that behind Cordy. I don't know if I would have lasted long enough to stay in there. There was a comment, even Cordy was telling me that when you come there, people are not going to be necessarily so willing to do business with you, especially when it comes to investing and doing different things like that, because they want to know that when they wake up tomorrow, you're still going to be there. You have something to run away to. You're breaking up a little bit, but I think we're high-fiving, right?
I think, she's high-fiving you. She's high-fiving.
Yeah. I like we go back and forth, which isn't a bad thing.
Johnetta must be on that MTN network. We gonna use
our
her.
coins. You have to root yourself here. I tried Vodafone. Vodafone didn't work. Now I'm on
MTN network, girl.
I am.
I knew it.
That might be slow. Are you sure?
I've tried both. I tried Vodafone and now I've switched to MTN. Just bear with me.
We sometimes we have slow internet in Ghana, real life challenge. It just so happens I'm staying at the African region. So I mean, I'm sure not that many people are on the internet. That's probably why I'm a little bit better because I'm not on a mobile network.
And also currently I'm not in Accra. I'm in Prom or a little bit past Prom. There's a beautiful sister out here. If I can I'm gonna show y'all her house just a little bit. This place is like a little mini mansion.
Oh, we getting previews.
I can't even get the whole house in the picture, but she got a house right here at the water.
Get out there and show us. Get out
okay, hold on. Let me see. She got a whole mini mansion out here. Right at the water, I tell you. Hold on, I'm going. This is her house. Look at this. Yes, I'm still walking. Like
wow.
I can't walk around the whole house though.
You see, we feel the thing. Yeah.
another little building there, and the ocean is just there.
You see, these are the stories that people love to hear about Ghana, and it is possible, but like you said, it's not easy. And just because I see you're at an event and time does wrap, real quick, Johnetta, I know you probably have faced your share of challenges in Ghana, as any repatriate does. If you had one solid piece of advice that you wish someone would have given you before you took your journey, what would it
be? Okay, well, I'll give you two. The first one was some advice that my spiritual mentor gave me, and it was true. She said, whatever you're running from or whatever is like your flaws in the States will magnify when you hit the continent. So as best you can, go see your counselors, talk to somebody, your minister, your rabbi, whomever, before you come, because it will magnify. And I did a lot of work before I came to Ghana to get my mind right, so that I was solid in my spiritual foundation and my being before I came here. And then one piece I wish people would have said, I wish I would have known more about the economy, like just more about how money works here and how fast things can go, and just more of that. Because, you know, in the States, you can budget pretty well. Like things cost a steady amount.
Excellent point.
Whereas here, like from year to year, from month to month, week to week, the prices change. And you just kind of have to have that in your mind and know how to work with that. As my friend Rodney says, like, you'll become a magician soon. You'll know how to make 3,000 CDs fit a 6,000 CD a month budget, right? So I wish I just would have known more about how money works here before I came. I mean, I've learned and I'm still learning, but if I would have started with that information, I might have made some better decisions financially when I first came.
Excellent advice. And I see Sean was doing his outside view over there. I mean, well, outside views. I mean, I'm gonna open up my hotel window because I get a great view of the
Accra edition.
Yes.
Come on, city.
We have
come on, Bellagio.
Yes, we have major highways. It's beautiful. No place like home, which is Ghana for me.
Yes. Amen. It's a beautiful place. You know, Ghana has so much opportunity. That's so if someone asks me, why do I feel so comfortable doing and risking things in Ghana? Because I just feel like it's endless opportunity and it's not an oversaturated system. So it's like little things, little business ideas could pop off and you could be like a millionaire here just because nobody's doing it.
I agree.
You know?
I mean, I bought recycling to Ghana 5 years ago. And I mean, you know, and I don't even have a recycling background. So I always tell people that believe in yourself and I mean, see what happens. So we don't want to take up too much of your time because we'll see you at an event. We're also out of town. The little is up, as you've seen her join us. So I think we're going to be ending the show. Thank everyone for joining Abroad While Black. This Saturday, we'll be back next Saturday. We're featuring Corey Yoakley, who's doing Abroad While Single Mothering. You may remember she was supposed to be on 2 weeks ago, but she had a technical issue. Today we spoke with Johnetta Nzali. We'll be posting all of her resources. She's an educator that moved out from North Carolina, giving her experiences on teaching in Ghana. She's provided some other resources, so we'll post the H.E.R Collective page on our Facebook page in case you want to check them out and watch the previous video she's done on finding jobs in its education and healthcare, right?
Yes.
So we'll post the link to her page so that you can link up on that. If you want to get in contact with her, you can send us a message as well, and we can put you directly in contact with her. So we'll make sure that you get all the resources as usual. If you haven't liked the page, do so. Make sure you host a watch party. Make sure you subscribe. We thank everyone again for tuning in today. We look forward to seeing you next week, same time, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And she's also just dropped her information, hercollective.org in the comments as well. So we'll also get you the information for the website as well.
Yes,
Awesome.
it was a pleasure speaking with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
and when
much.
the borders open up fully, let's all just, you know, do a, what is it? Beyond the return. Like, this December should really crack since we know what it's like to not have each other for a while.
Look, what?
Amen. And on that one, again, we'll go ahead and close it up. Again, share this with your friends. Please share with us suggestions, comments, and different things, different topics we should cover as well. We love you. We wish everybody the best. Stay strong, stay Black.
Bye-bye.
Bye.